We're back.
Welcome back.
Hello.
Welcome back. We just took a short rest. We hope you've been enjoying it so far. You join us as we wake on a brand new day after spending a night in, what was it, Monks? What
It was
the name of it?
Abbotsville was the town, and we're staying in the
Abbots-
River Hill Inn.
It's Abbott's Water, by the way.
Abbott's Water.
Abbott's Water.
But you know what? We had a name for a town, so why don't we just call the lake Abbott's Water?
Abbott's Water.
Yeah, that's
Sure.
lovely,
Yeah.
actually.
It's quite reminiscent of lakes near where two of us grew up.
Very nice. Everything's been going so well so far. The mechanics are working pretty flawlessly, just from a mechanical perspective. Very slight touch, as we'd hoped. And I suppose we carry on the next morning. May we start kind of in the breakfast room after having kind of woken ourselves up?
Yes, that's fine. So, in this kind of dining area, there's people around various tables, and there's the same squirrel that we saw the night before in the armchair has now got a large white apron on, and is carrying a large, pretty much a cauldron full of porridge, and is kind of dealing it out to people, and invites us all to sit down in a booth off to one side.
Borkins arrives in from the kitchen with the squirrel chef and kind of goes, comes over to the table and goes, negotiations were fierce, but I have in my possession, holds up a bag, some delightful potato cakes which will serve us well for lunch should we be on the road.
I think we should take the time to take in that old monastery. I think that clearly concerning ourselves with the spirituality of the land has given us mixed results so far, but what harm can there be in taking in the delights of these places?
Oh,
Maybe they'll have some.
I quite agree. That old rabbit last night told me that there's a very interesting species of moth that exists up there. I believe it's the lunar moth, which incidentally cannot and never does eat during its lifetime.
Yes, I think we should definitely go to the monastery because monasteries tend to have very nice drink. Maybe I can procure a bottle for use at the fair.
As Tio mentioned that about the moth, Hermes just kind of shakes his head and goes, "Poor wretch." Just starts scarfing down as much porridge as possible. Shall we leave and make our way to the monastery?
Indeed, yeah. As we head out, Constance is probably going. I'm not too familiar with this town, but Hermes, you seem to recognize the monastery. Would you mind leading us up to it?
Hermes nods, more than happy to do so, although making a kind of slight cawing noise that usually indicates he feels he's being put upon somehow, even though he's the one who suggested going there in the first place. He moves out of the tavern and out. Like I say, it's a large, still lake with a sandy shoreline. Maybe this early in the morning, even though it's warming up, maybe just a little bit of chill on the air. And with it being such a still lake, maybe like a haze of mist and fog over the surface of the lake and up onto the green fields and rambling hills around it. And as I said, there's like a white stone monastery that's quite large and impressive, with large stained glass windows and a number of ferret monks kind of ferreting around it. And it's on a slight incline from the lake. So being as he's been put upon already, Hermes is definitely going to expect Borkins to help him up that incline. And as we're kind of moving up towards that, we see that amongst the ferret monks, there is also an abbot who cuts a much larger figure than all those. And as he turns around as we're kind of wheeling up closer, and the monks are going about. They've got a little like vegetable patch that they're planting things in, and a garden that they're tending. And the abbot turns around and sees us approach, and kind of raises one huge panda paw to kind of gesture towards us in greeting, and then peers a little closer, gets a set of pinch glasses out of a pocket on his voluminous white robe, and puts them on his nose and says, Good grief, Tio." This is Tio's mentor.
Mentor? What is this? But I thought. Ooh,
You never
Why
mentioned
are you
anything
here?
about the church, Tio.
mentor? What are you doing here?
The abbot kind of like strides forward, half kind of like, big kind of rolls of his body, and kind of claps in pleasure and says, "Oh, I decided that perhaps a life of dedicated study and spiritual thought would be best for me. I see that you yourself still seem to be studying and writing." He's gesturing at the. Have you got the book on your back at the moment?
Yeah,
or?
I have the book, definitely. Just like I think, yeah. I sort of like snatch it off my back and like offer it out to him, and I'm like, yes, I still have it. I still have it, Master. I've taken very, very good care of it, and I've added some of my own notes. Well, I can't wait to show it to you, but I thought you were lost. I mean, you just walked into the fog one day and you were gone. What happened?
Oh, well, perhaps that's maybe a story for another time, Tio. But why don't we share some breakfast? My brothers here will take care of that for us, and we just need to go into the hall, and I can look through this book. And well, yes, of course. He looks kind of slightly shamefaced and embarrassed, and is kind of tapping his claws on his chest as he's clearly trying to avoid the topic.
Borkins has kind of caught the gaze of Hemp and has kind of mouthed 2 breakfasts with a shocked wonder on his face.
Yeah, Hemp's eyes are just going to light up at the mention of like essentially 11s, and it's just going to like skip off after the abbot. Yeah, towards the eating hall. Yeah.
I think Tio is in like total shock and is still just standing there clutching his book, just staring off afterwards.
Borkins will kind of
is not moving. It's just like
Borkins will put a friendly hand on the shoulder and go, "Now we can learn some news stories and maybe some more stories about breakfast and pancakes and travels and."
Yes.
The abbot kind of rolls forward, maybe literally, it's panda, into the great hall of the monastery, which is kind of tall and expansive and airy. With it has stained glass windows down the side of it, but much of the roof is it's just open to the air, and luckily Abbott's water in the town here are generally very balmy and calm, although I suppose there's a little chill on it. And there's a large wooden table in a really long one in the center of the room with a lot of kind of very basic plates and cutlery on it. And the abbot wanders to the head and kind of taps at the table so that everyone sits in the chairs nearby, and just kind of rolls back. And as the ferret monks start coming up and kind of serving kind of quite hearty breakfast foods, like you said, maybe some pancakes and maybe some eggs and stewed beans and stuff like this. He leans over to Tio and says, "Well, let's see what you have in that book."
Oh, of course. And Tio opens to a page which is just full of his fingerprinting and some sort of hasty done sketches. It goes, well, this is my most recent work. But you must tell me. I heard that there are lunar moths in this temple or around these grounds. The old rabbit in the village told me.
Oh, there are indeed absolutely many lunar moths. Would you like a sample?
Absolutely, I would love one. And where do they usually gather?
Oh, well, a great many of them gather in the roofs and around the windows of the monastery at night. Brother Slink, could you do the honors and fetch some of my collection? Brother Slink, obviously a ferret in a hooded monk's robe, kind of goes and slinks off to do that and returns with essentially a kind of like a wheeled curio cabinet that just has stacks of sort of large glass jars with holes punctured in the top of them, full of like flitting around lunar moths, which the abbot gestures at and goes, "Of course, it's very easy to keep them, since they, as I'm sure you remember, Tio, they do not
Eat.
He looks very pleased that you remembered this and kind of
I
starts going through the collection.
Everything you told me, Mentor. Everything you told me, as it's I was a toad and a tadpole.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on this situation while Tio and the abbot go look at moths?
At some point, Borkins is going to be offering to assist moving stuff to and from the table for the breakfast goods, and kind of has kind of not left the table and is hovering around being useful among the waiting staff. You get the feeling he might be up to something.
Hemp is going to be following closely and is already up to something by sneaking small portions of food from various plates as they go past.
I think Hemp is going to have no problem sneaking portions of food from Tio's plate because Tio is completely otherwise occupied.
Actually, yeah,
Hemp probably just swipes a whole pancake. That's
what I was about to say. If Tio's like being in conversation with the abbot, anyone watching is just going to see one tiny paw just like sneak over and then just like I'm
in real danger of dying.
Hemp is properly tucking into some pancakes.
Nothing bad must happen to this character or there will be trouble, profound trouble.
The abbot kind of is obviously showing Tio these different things and is looking at the book that you've passed over to him. The abbot's much more capable of holding it open and reading it than most others are because he kind of towers over everyone.
It really explains why the book is so massive.
Absolutely. And he's kind of looking through it with wonder, kind of going, This is really most remarkable, Tio. All these years you've been carrying on this work?
Well, of course, Mentor. I'm always chasing the fallen. I'm always looking to find new moths. I'm very, very serious about my studies.
Yes, Tio. When I left those years ago, at first I was just lost, and I found myself in many places, and I came here as the janitor. I don't know how I ended up as the abbot. Well, it's a long story, but... And he rests kind of one huge paw on your shoulder and says, "You know it's fine to stop, don't you?
Like
A work can be done.
but there's so much more. So
I
much
know,
more.
I know.
There's I just this evening I was told about the most amazing creatures.
I know, Tio, and you can if you want, if it fills you with joy. But you know you can stop if you want.
But it must be finished. It isn't finished.
Nothing ever is, Tio. You finish it when you feel ready. And he kind of pats your shoulder a bit. I am going to spend a token in order to find what someone needs to give them a chance to change fundamentally. And I have another 2 tokens here. It isn't an official one, but I still am going to take one of my tokens away for basically essentially emotionally blackmailing Chris to play as a musical instrument earlier. So I'm going to try that as well, because I'm hungry.
Tempted to take a token for my pay as a starving musician. I will take this small cat. And so Borkins will turn back up at the table, and kind of with a plate of his own food and another plate or 2 for everyone else, and kind of sit down and tuck in and go, we probably should be making a move. We don't want to lose the whole morning to this valley.
Well, I do remember my mentor. He had been to Redbranch Fair.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes.
Perhaps he could direct us. What is the best possible way of getting there?
Well, I seem to recall that you'll have a fairly even journey if you follow the river, at least a certain distance, and then at some point I know there's a moor and perhaps a maelstrom of some sort. Although maybe you could endeavour to avoid that. And what else might there be? Help me! I don't know what you guys have lined up.
So I'll kind of get the map from Hermes and kind of lay it out on the table and go, this is what we have so far. It's an old map.
I remember something. I do from my tadpole days. I only vaguely remember it, mind, but I do remember it. There was let me just get the map. And let me look. I think I swear I remember it.
There we go.
Completely different map. Right. Let me see. Yes. Well, I remember how we crossed the moor, and then there's the maelstrom. But to avoid the maelstrom, we could go. It's a bit of a trek, but I remember we went over the Great Hill, and the Great Hill had a wonderful cairn on top. It was quite fantastic, and yes, and the little stand of pine trees, and we met someone there. We met someone, and what was she? Oh, she was a mole. Yes, and she was an earthworm herder. Yes.
Worm?
You remember her name?
Worms?
Hermes.
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 Just not just a moment.
Do not eat the specimen. How many times do I have to tell you? No eating the specimens. Or livestock, for that matter.
An old man should be indulged.
I'm an old man myself, Hermes. I don't go around eating earthworms.
The abbot kind of indulges you with a large breakfast, which I'm sure Hemp steals a good 3/4 of from under the noses of the monks, and then I think we'll be on our way. And though I think we kind of set our map a little bit there, with a moor coming up soon, it sounds like. But just so I don't explode all of my semi-prepared improvisational cues in one sequence, would someone else like to take the map for a thing we will hit? Because it sounds like we've got something, and then the moor, and then the hill, which is Skye's. Does someone else want to take the map on the way to the
I'm happy
moor?
to take the map for just the last portion of the river. So there we go. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I think I'm happy to take the lead as we head along next to the river. That seems like a fairly easy track anyway. So
I
I
request that we're actually heading upriver rather than downriver.
yeah. So we're going to head up next to the river as we go upriver, and the river kind of meanders quite a lot next to the road, but the road continues on fairly straight. And after we've been walking for maybe an hour and a half, the river kind of bends quite close to the road at this point. And you can hear very faintly just kind of some giggling in the distance and the whistle of a fishing rod, the fly of a fishing rod zipping through the air. And as we just crest over this small hillock, you can see on this meander of the river, there is an otter with a fishing rod who is fly fishing, and two much smaller otters are skipping around in the shallows of this stream. There's like a pebbly beach that they're all on, and the otter is currently sitting on a small folding stool, and next to him is a bucket which currently has a lid on it, and a smaller tin just in front of his right leg.
I'll once we're kind of within beckoning distance, I will call them out. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you all today?
Is there good fish today?
Oh, excellent. Yes. And the otter is going to lift up the lid of the bucket that he's got, and there are a few decent sized trout in there. And he's going to say, yes, the bait seems to be catching them very well at the moment. The mole in town, Flint, has provided me with some superb bait, some hand-caught worms. And he's just going to shake the tin that he's got.
Why is everyone looking at me?
Relieved that her niece has probably missed the fact that there may or may not be worms present.
I think Tio has gone down to the waterside and is looking at interest with the at the little baby otters or the smaller otters, because they're sort of picking up rocks and chucking them into water and letting them splash, and they're laughing and having a great time. And he goes, could you just bring one of those rocks over here, please?
Yes, so the larger otter, the dad is going to say, yeah, Nellie, Brooke, bring the nice toads, one of those rocks that you're playing with. Seems to be interested in, is it biology that you are studying with that large tome?
Oh yes, I will show you currently. And so Tio takes the rock and turns it over and goes, well, as you can see on the underside of this rock, you have these little creatures which are what we would call caddis flies. And they are little larvae which will pupate and hatch and turn into all sorts of interesting insect life. But yes, I just wanted to collect a few. It's always much harder to find them when they're in their larval state. And let me just get a vial. And he starts distractedly putting the caddis flies into a vial.
The little kind of flickering, glowing shape of ER, one of the gods in in Hermes' chair starts kind of fluttering around you, just going, "Be careful, be very careful. They don't bite, do they?"
No. I think it's more in danger of me. Really, I must be very, very careful when putting it in this vial.
Well, do just watch out! Watch out!
Oh, well, it's fine. Strange thing, creature. Hermes, you never did explain, or so I could understand. I mean, that it is alive, isn't it?
Oh, are gods alive?
That's what I'm asking you.
In a manner of speaking.
Well, is it biological?
Oh no! It is constructed entirely of glamour, thought, the hopes and dreams of a thousand of our ancestors.
Very well.
I'll be kind of on the periphery, trying to maneuver Hemp so that he can kind of get some playtime exposure to the other kids, because I don't know if he seems quite cloistered.
Yes, yeah. Hemp, at first quite nervous, is going to get beckoned over by Nellie and Brooke, these two quite young otter twins, and eventually is going to be persuaded into a game of skipping stones across this section of the stream. And once they start getting the hang of it, then they're having quite a lot of fun. They don't get much experience with other kids, so this is a nice change for them, and Constance seems quite happy about it as well.
My work here is done. I'll go over to our fisher friend and go, well, may I interest you in some light trading?
Certainly, yes. By the way, my name is Sandy. My family and I just have a small cottage down the other side of the stream, just down there. And he's going to point down to, and you can just see in the distance, there's a small wooden cottage with a thin trail of smoke coming out of the chimney. It's just by the water's edge.
Wonderful. I have in my possession, he kind of reaches into his bag and pulls out a bottle of dark glass. A nice drink from the monastery below. I wonder, would you be interested in trading it for one of your nice fresh trout?
Certainly, yes. Well, I'll trade you for more than one. That's some fine stuff that you've got there. And he's going to inspect it. Yes. No, this is some gorgeous dark mead. I believe that my husband picked up a couple of bottles last. Do they have Christmas? I don't know.
Last winter, yeah.
Last winter, and we enjoyed it greatly. So yes, I'm sure he will appreciate this.
Superb. I suppose all I need now is a spare bucket. Hermes, you wouldn't happen to have a small bucket?
Do we? Yes. Furtive says, hold on. I know. What? No, a bucket. A bucket.
Oh,
A bucket.
2.5. Very useful gods.
Like one of the
half is
but
furtive.
no. Well, it doesn't need to have a handle, but no.
Oh. Would you have a bucket you could spare, please?
Yes, I'm sure that So he's going to start digging around in his little pack that he's got down by his side, and he's going to bring out. It's not a bucket, but it's more sort of a reasonably long box that's lined. So it's not going to go funny with the smell of the trout. Yeah,
it'll carry the trout. Excellent.
Yeah.
Then the deal is done. Thank you. Another fortuitous meeting.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure. So during this exchange, Constance is going to have turned and just like fixed her eyes on you, Borkins, and as you walk back over, is just going to whisper, I don't recall being offered any drink at the monastery.
You weren't helping out in the kitchens.
And her eyes are just going to like narrow in suspicion.
At this moment, Dio is actually sort of sitting on the grass and looking slightly pensively at the vial with the caddisfly in it. And he's got a faraway look in his eyes, and he just kind of like, he looks at it and he just goes, oh, but when does it end? When is it finished? I don't know. I really don't. And then he just sort of like meanders towards the river and looks at the caddisfly and sort of shakes his head again and just sort of like tips it out and puts the vial back in his pocket.
There's a kind of little creak just behind you as Hermes brings his chair to the water's edge and is just kind of peers down at you as you're doing that, and sort of nods and says, "It's broadly speaking, with some ecumenical variations on the theme. It's a good thing to set things free."
Yes. I suppose one doesn't have to know everything about everything. I maybe sometimes things just live.
And I think there's a freedom in itself in knowing you don't have to know everything.
Well, I mean, yeah, well,
Barreling without a moment of social nuance into the conversation, Borkins comes up, just short of putting his hands around both people's shoulders and goes, "Well, the important thing is that moths are friends, isn't that right?"
well, I mean, there are some moths who are not
The important thing, Borkins, is that you keep the smell of that filthy fish away from me as we proceed along the road.
This is going to make a wonderful dinner, and if not, at least a good exchange for board and lodgings for tonight.
Oh, is that trout?
It is. 2 of them. Very fine.
Oh,
Fresh.
I know a wonderful recipe for trout pie. It was taught to me by mentor.
I wonder if we can rustle up the rest of the ingredients en route.
Quite possibly, I believe. Well, I mean, it isn't quite springtime yet, but we might get some nice buds and shoots if we are lucky.
I'm sure the mentor was very keen on buds and shoots. A specific kind of, I'm sure.
We should, I suppose, continue up this hill so we can break the back of it before midday.
Yeah, as soon as all 3 of you turn round, you are covered in a giant splash as Nellie, Brooke, and Hemp have heaved a large rock into the stream, at which point Constance is going to chastise Hemp.
Tio is going to give a dramatic, like, no, my dome, it's soaked. And he's just like squeezing water out of it, like, no. Like,
Hermes is just going to have one. Sorry, you finish. Sorry.
Yeah, there's just ink dripping out from the pages, and it's a mess. It's a complete mess. He's like, my life's work, my mentor's life's work. Oh no! If the
Tio,
mentor was to see this,
you know it's seen worse than that. Stop with the waterworks.
water.
Hermes is like just off to one side with one kind of feathered arm out, just going.
Right idea, wrong direction.
So Constance is going to like bustle over to Tio and just say, "Never fear. The sun is coming out. I'm sure it will dry out very quickly. You have nothing to fear."
That child of yours, I'm sure he's a rugged. Oh.
Now, Hemp apologized to Tio for ruining his manuscript, and Hemp is just going to like shuffle their feet and just go, "Sorry, Mr. Tio," and that's probably the most that you've heard them speak this entire time. And then it's just going to like step back behind Constance's large traveling coat and disappear from view.
I think Tio is so shocked by the fact that Hemp has actually spoken. He sort of like softens a bit. He's like, "Well, I mean, it's okay, I suppose. It's been rained on plenty before. Drenched, downpour, deluge, really."
Hermes is kind of rolling himself away and calls back over his shoulder, "Quick, we must try and make it maybe across the moor before this rain truly breaks."
"We must have trout pie." And Tio goes off ahead, lugging his now sodding thesis.
Thanks again. Have a good day.
So,
yeah. The officer's going to wave us all off as we head off.
So I believe we are sort of at the moor now. I'm just going to consult the map here. So, we are making our way over swiftly onto a kind of open moorland, which is sort of like, again, kind of rolling hills, but more gentle this time, and covered in kind of soft grass and bracken and thistles and heather. And quite quickly, we sort of lose sight of any of the larger hills around us. We almost have, like, there's the vague sense of the bubbling river off in the near distance, but we can hear it more than we can see it because that soft, that mist we saw on Abbott's Water has clearly crept over the moor itself and is sort of rising a bit and giving a little bit of a spooky and ethereal and eerie vibe. The more we walk, kind of the few words we say, we're less inclined to feel like we want to talk, and the few words we do say kind of echo out across this moorland, while Hermes occasionally babbles something about. He knows there is a port just ahead. He absolutely knows there is. While he is doing this, one of the smaller arrangements of spirits and gods in his chair, who you rarely see. There are a family of little cloud gods that are all quite imaginative and oracular, and they've emerged from some of the bottom parts of the cabinets where they don't often come out from, maybe because they feel like, because there's so much mist and fog around, perhaps they're in their kind of natural environment, and they start to softly sing to each other a rather morbid little local folk song called "The Heron and Her Murdered Lover," which isn't helping. It isn't helping with the sort of atmosphere. And then Hermes, who's kind of in front, sort of comes to a stop and says, "Oh, well, who goes there? Out in the mist. Who goes there?" And you can see a kind of shape, kind of looking, like when something's backlit with a little, like in the fog and the afternoon haze, and the backlit maybe looks much larger than they might actually be as the light kind of filters through the mist ahead.
Borkins looks a little bit shook and is kind of making his way off the side of the road to kind of hunker down and try and get a closer look at this, what he assumes is some kind of spectral spirit. Probably isn't.
Yeah, Hemp's got their knife out in front of them, just like the tiny knife, just ready to go.
the figure sort of like moves closer with a slightly awkward side to side gait, and as they sort of emerge through the fog, you can see that it's a figure in robes, but robes quite dissimilar from those that the monks and the abbot were wearing, kind of off greenish coloured and sort of a bit bulky around what seems to be a somewhat spindly form. And almost sort of theatrically and intentionally dramatically, the figure reaches up a couple of sort of kind of foldy, wrinkled claws up to the kind of outline of her hood and tips them back. And underneath is a vulture looking, kind of peering at you quite closely and tipping her head side to side and sort of having a sense of eeriness to her arrival and her mannerism. And then she tips her head to the side and says, "Oh, hello."
Oh, you scared the life out of me. I thought it was some kind of apparition. You have an incredible cloak.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to know I still have it. What are you doing out on the moor?
We're crossing. We're on our way to the Great Valley.
But why out on the moor?
I believe it's...
All alone? Aren't you scared?
Well, I was a minute ago.
It's the fastest route.
But haven't you heard of the heron and her murdered lover? I'm just joking. I heard you singing it. I have a little shack over on the way if you want some tea before you carry on towards the port.
Oh, we could make use of those potato cakes. That sounds wonderful.
Very well. Yes. Not many people cross the moor to get to Lone River, but go on then.
It is a storied year. This is we are eventually heading for the Redbranch Fete.
Redbranch, that's a name I haven't heard in, well, I suppose 10 years, which makes sense.
Yeah, that would make sense, yeah.
She waves you through the fog and the mist on the moor to like a little hut. It's quite cozy inside, but the outside is sort of like just a dome of packed kind of mud and reeds and the occasional like large rock and brick. But once you go inside, it's really very cozy in there. There's like a little chimney area in the center through which smoke goes up from a large roaring fire, and there's a number of sort of soft mossy sections on the inside that people can kind of sit and rest on. And from the ceiling overhead, the kind of clumped together hardened mud is dangling a lot of odd sort of esoteric little devices which spin slightly, even though there's not much air movement through here. And she wanders over to behind the cauldron and kind of peers into it, gives it a stir over the fire, and then hangs a little kettle over the top of next to the cauldron on this rack over the fire, and looks round at you all and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, introductions. I'm Carlin. And you all are?"
Hello, Carlin. I'm Borkins. These are my travelling compatriots. Theo, Constance, Hermes, and I think you might, if you're very lucky, spot Hemp.
Hemp's ears just like poke out the side of the travelling cloak, followed by a paw that just kind of waves and then ducks back in.
Oh, well, this is all very pleasant. And you're all going to the fete, you say?
Yes, we hope to make a good time.
That's quite a long way.
Yes, and our map is kind of old, so we've been... it's been quite an adventure of rediscovery so far.
I see. Well,
yes,
maybe...
we are relying on an old bear's memory.
Well, I think when you get to Lone River, I might advise you to perhaps hire yourself a little watercraft even. And that can take you on to the Great Hill and and further and beyond if you like, but yes, maybe that's for the best. She pours a little kind of cup of tea for everyone, from little shallow clay bowls, and kind of passes them around to everyone. It smells very nice, if a little gamey, maybe.
I'll offer up the potato cakes that we got from the inn to all and sundry.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Not my usual. Yes. Starts kind of chomping away at them. And
You live out here alone. What is your craft, if I may ask?
oh, I'm a witch.
Oh. I suppose this is the perfect place if you. There are good spirits here, I assume.
Good, bad, in between, like there are everywhere. Some people to meet, and people who end up on the moor usually have interesting stories to tell. You have an interesting story to tell, don't you, Mr. Borkins?
You get an eyebrow. How so?
Oh, you've done things in the past?
But have we not all done things in the past?
Oh, yes, of course we have. But yours define you, don't they?
Borkins looks very kind of unsettled at this. Uncharacteristically, he likes being in control of a situation, and he does not feel in control of this one. Have we met?
That's a complex question to answer.
Oh, of course, naturally. Look, what's as my father used to say, what's in the past is in the past, and what isn't in the past is no longer in the past. So.
Yes, but I can't help but feel that you maybe could resolve it a little more. Come to terms with it. With, the things you've stolen, the places you've been, the unpleasant things you may or may not have done. And I think you need motivation.
This sounds like it might be downright uncomfortable.
Most things are if they're worthwhile.
What do you have in mind?
Oh, nothing too onerous. I just think that you need to maybe talk about some of these things, and I think you need to. More so than even that, I think maybe you just need to give a little more. You've taken things and now it's time to give things. Yes. In fact, what I'd say is that until you've given everything, apart from the clothes on your back that you have and you pick up, until you've done all those things and given them to people who might really appreciate them and might really, really value those things, then I think I don't like to do this to someone I've just met, but yes, I think you're cursed.
Goodness. This is the worst welcome I've had from a witch in a long turn.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry to hear that. But I think until that's happened, yes, you are you're cursed, and just misfortune. I think that's fairly good. Yes. Has everyone enjoyed their tea?
Well,
Constance is just at this point kept hemp as far away from this vulture as she possibly can, and just nods and says, "Yes, thank you. I think we should be leaving now."
Now, hang on.
No, quite. Your bowls, please. They're rather valuable to me.
Hang on. I might say we frogs have a saying, and that is that a past life is a past life. You were a different creature then. completely different.
Oh, yes, and that is why we do not punish Mr. Toad. That is why we account for things.
So
Your bowls, please.
the bowls, Borkins will return the bowl, and an astute observer will notice that there is one extra bowl there that wasn't there before. It does seem different from the others, but it's definitely N+1 situation.
Carlin kind of gathers all those bowls and tucks them into a robe, seems to notice something and looks up at Borkins and says, a good start. And then you are all sat on a small hilltop in the moors. There is no sign of Carlin, no sign of the hut, no sign of the bowls. But you still have a warm sensation of the tea in your bellies.
Well, last time how uncouth.
Do you run into witches very often, Borkins?
Once or twice. They're generally very amenable. None of this petulant meddling. Good grief! Come, let's break this moor. I want to get away from here.
Yeah, I think Constance is probably going to mutter under breath. As disturbing as it was, I think might be well deserved.
So I suppose we leave on. We're pretty sure we've ended up in more or less the same space. We're not completely lost by the situation
No.
we're in.
It's just suddenly the hut isn't there.
And
I think it's not too long until the moors kind of start receding, and that the slight shiver down everyone's spines kind of dissipates, and ahead is a short bridge, like a stone bridge leading over to a little port settlement, in which you can see a number of animals. But there's panthers and cheetahs, woodchucks, wildcats, and tapir, and they're all kind of wandering around this port, going around their business as it's joined onto that river we were following. As just before we cross the bridge, there is a little plaque in front of it, commemorating that this bridge has been put up here on this point because the port is out on a little island in the middle of the river, and this sort of area of the river where it's kind of cut off the port from the land. The sign is commemorating that this was a path carved by the giant king that separated the port of Lone River from the shores of the river forever. Crow's a bit cranky about carrying on using this map. Who would like it? I think Chris hasn't had it for a while. But,
I know this. I know this path. I know. I just have a bit of trivia. That is all. I couldn't make head or tail of that map, but the trivia is that great king was in fact a toad, because toads they create trails in the mud with their bodies, and yes, just interesting fact.
It would indeed make sense for the god of a river to be a toad. Well then, maybe
will back me up on that.
Maybe Hermes passes the map to Borkins then.
Okay. Lone River. Okay. Find it. It's too early for anyone to think about spending the night yet, and I would really like to walk some more of that ill feeling off my feet, if it's okay with everyone else. Yes. We can get a ferry here that'll take us across, and then we will actually crest the downland into the Great Valley. Agreed?
Well,
yes,
what about the maelstrom? We must avoid it.
Let me see.
Tio was saying that there was some kind of hill with a cairn.
There was
Maybe
a
we
great
should make for
hill
that.
with a cairn, but I'm not sure exactly. If you let me look at the map, I might be able to point it out. Right.
God,
Love it. Love it.
love it.
I'm too dyslexic for this. Right, okay. Yes. Yes, actually, well, my mentor didn't mention it, but if we do take the ferry across the river, it's there's the Great Hill, and then there's the valley. So it looks like, yes, the reason we can't carry on down the river is the maelstrom. So we'd have to get out and cross the hill.
I can deal with 2 hills in one day if everyone else can.
Sounds
It
like
is.
we have a path ahead of us. Cross the river,
Cross the river.
over the hill, through the valley, the fair.
Seems
Yes.
right. While we're in
Indeed.
town, shall we try and procure some of the stuff for this vaunted pie?
Sounds good. I think I do actually see a grocery shop down in the market square, and Constance is going to point down to a bustling market square with a few stalls, but then also a few shops behind it. So there's some stalls selling like vegetables and like some knitwear. There's a shoemaker's as well, but then there is like a grocery store off in one corner of the market square.
I think I'll go with Theo. You're the one with the recipe, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
Come.
I remember it from memory. It was passed down to me. Yes. So it was the trout, which you must let me think. It was nettle shoots. If we can get some nettle shoots and some good pepper, good black pepper, and some some brown butter.
Brown butter. Well, I think we should find all of that in the market without too much difficulty.
Yes, it's a wonderful early springtime pie.
So we will. I'll definitely me and Theo will kind of make for the markets and kind of hopefully draw everyone else in tow. But it won't be too challenging to find these bits. Nettles are a very staple food source in the region anyway.
I think it's pretty unusual for Tio to be doing anything other than obsessing over moths. So this is slightly new to him.
And kind of Borkins is happy to have. It just feels a bit nice to have Tio on side, I suppose. I'm not buried in a book. But yeah, I think after we find most of what we need, and we then make our way to the ferry, kind of almost a little bit of a shame to not be spending more time, but the ferry takes us across. I mean, we've said it's a river. It's a big river, and it's not necessarily fast flowing. It's like a very, it's like a lake with purpose. And when we make our way across to the far bank, which has no town on it, it is just a jetty, and the path ever onward, which takes us up and onwards. Let me see, where can we go next? We've been walking by rivers all day, and once again we're by a little tributary river, and on our way up the road running parallel to it. So Borkins kind of goes, "Oh, yes," and he points to there's not a little side path here. It goes by a waterfall. Shall we chance again a little detour?
Hermes is more than happy to do this. He has he doesn't look or seem like it, and this isn't true, but he's definitely spent his young life, the younger part of his life, playing a lot of video games. So he is always happy to check behind the waterfall. None of that is true, but he is also interested in looking at the waterfall.
So we
Yes, why, of course. But we do need to get a ferry across at some point soon if we want to get to Redbranch in good time.
So we've crossed the main river. This is a much smaller river. It's more of and our path runs parallel to it, not across it really so much.
Oh, I see.
Borkins is 100% certain that this is not so much a branching of the path, but a quick detour. He, filled with confidence, heads down this little kind of packed earth little path between trees, helping Hermes out when requested in some of the tighter moments. It's, again, a very nice kind of wooded area, and once again, the sound of running water. You find the river. It's not small. It may be about 20 meters across, and it's fast flowing, so it's shallow and has not been around for long. But as you're passing up, you start to find that the waterfall is not so much kind of a big, impressive drop as it is a series of steps that kind of, so like a dozen or so waterfalls that lead you on your path up. And you have a very nice walk beside this path up until you crest one of the steps and find the way ahead flooded. And we're almost halfway there.
I think at this point, Tio actually just like goes, well, oh dear. Well, I suppose that might not be the worst time to have a bit of a rest, since we find our way impeded, and we can discuss what to do next.
Quite. Around, through, or back, I suppose.
And Tio sort of just like flops down on the grass and like seems to be just like looking around and enjoying the scenery for the first time, and like he's like looking at the world like as it is as one, rather than lots of tiny little individual bits. And he's like, oh, the light here is quite nice, isn't it? The way it filters through the trees and it sparkles on the water, and there are little motes, little tiny particles just drifting in the breeze and the trickling of the water. Oh, it's quite lovely. I could just sit here and watch.
Borkins is kind of looking at the scenery in the same way, but somewhat more fretfully. You can see him with some rope which he's taken out of his bag, and he's kind of appraising the trees and go, maybe if we can sling a crossbeam from there, we can go across.
I think I'm going to take a token for appreciating the beauty.
And while Tio is appreciating beauty, Hermes has moved his chair into just the edge of that flooding over the kind of the rocks and the soil, and he's kind of reached down and tugged off the two, like he has two long stripy socks normally on his claws, and he's just like tugged those off, draped them over the side of the chair, and is just kind of like splashing his claws into the water there, which is quite clear and nice. And just seems to be gently enjoying that.
How much trouble would some wet feet be?
Hemp is already like waist deep in the water, just like splashing around.
That gives Borkins a great idea. He goes, Hemp! Ties a deft and quick knot in the rope and throws it out to him. Grab that. Do you think you could make it to the other side?
Yeah, Hemp just like wades through. It gets up to like mid-navel level, but it's like to everyone else it's not that deep, but to Hemp that's very deep. And like wades across and then just holds it up on the other side, and then points to like a slightly bent over birch tree, that there's a branch low enough that Hemp can reach it, and just like points and cocks their head towards Borkins to check that that's what they're actually wanting them to do.
Good job, Hemp. That's the way we showed you. Go ahead, tie it off there. And kind of on a lower voice, he goes, that's actually not very deep, is it? We could just wait it.
I think it's best we just not say anything.
Yeah, I think at this stage we have to use the rope for something, otherwise poor Hemp is going to be crestfallen.
Poor Tadpole, he's tried so very hard. He's very, very impressive for such a small creature. Sorry, they've tried so hard. They're very impressive for such a small creature.
Oh, right. Now it comes to a problem of how do we get across this, to a problem of how do we make the rope look like it is vital to helping us get across. I'll need everyone's very best acting.
Constance is already doing possibly the best thespian work you've ever seen. Just like it's Everest is like wading through. They've actually gone onto their knees to make it look deeper than it is, and eventually comes out on the other side and just like pats Hemp on the head. Hemp's looking very pleased with themselves.
So what have we got now? What does this contraption look like?
It's literally just a rope from one side of this. Admittedly, this flood looks a lot deeper than it is, but
it's quite wide, so you can't actually see how deep it is at the middle. But as soon as Hemp went across, it's to everyone else, like even in Hermes' chair, it won't come up to the midpoint of the wheels.
Right. Yeah.
I think Tio is kind of enjoying this sort of like farce as well. It like decides to go across. He puts his toe like on his head. It goes across and like walks across, but kind of in that funny I'm going downstairs, but there's no stairs way. Just like down into the water, and then sort of like crouches and goes along with like the book above, just above the water, and it's very easy for him since he's a frog, so it's not no.
So, is it safe to say the only people still on this side of the flooding are Borkins and Hermes?
Yeah.
Well, what Hermes is going to do is going to kind of look round and just go. Turn around to Borkins and say, "Oh, I'm sure you can take care of the chair for an old man." And he kind of like heaves himself out of the chair and sort of and flies over the flooding with a few sort of noises and settles himself in front of a tree on the other side, just kind of like. It's entirely too long.
So Borkins, being the last one over, will tie the rope around himself and fasten it to the tree and instruct Hemp to make sure that he keeps the rope tight and just have Hemp basically almost pull him across. Again, maximum theatrics, minimum risk.
With the chair on his back, or
just kind of doing his best to keep the chair as dry as possible, understanding that it's probably going to get a little wet, if not completely dry.
One of the god's dulcet kind of flickers out from it, and just is kind of cheerleading you with little like noises as you make your way over the river. Well, not the river, flooding, whatever.
Crisis averted. Finally land the chair on the other side. Oh, good work, Hemp. Everyone else, good job.
That's better.
Good job on getting your gaming chair to creak at the same time as the.
It is not a hard. It's not a difficult task.
So it's not. There's a few more tiers of this kind of stepped waterfall to get through, but at the top we emerge back on the road. We've spent more time doing that than we probably would have just going straight, but we did get to see a nice waterfall, and onwards we head toward destiny. So we kind of. Are cresting we come to the top of this area. Kind of the trees are thinning out. It's not a high altitude by any situation, but it's becoming more squared like. Again, I suppose. But ahead of you, what you can see is you are given this incredible view ahead of you of what is known locally as the Great Valley. And Borkins will kind of slow everyone down and go, there it is, the Great Valley. We used to call it the Magi. There's some, the fair should be on the far side. But still, it's a good day's walk at least.
Does that mean that we are on the big hill?
We're tangential to, you can definitely see down into the Great Valley, but the hill may be to the side if you need it to be.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what this cairn business is all about then. And then we head down into the valley, I suppose.
So are we we're like looking across at the Great Hill, or it's next to, or
I think the way down into the valley is over the Great Hill. Maybe we're like on the foot of it now, and we've got to crest it.
You do have a commanding view of the way down, but the road is definitely carrying you towards this cairnland, I suppose.
Yeah. I will say, yes. Yes, I remember this now. There's an interesting thing about that hill. That hill is actually a village in itself. Yes, I remember the moles. The moles, they live in that very hill. Very worthwhile stopping by there. So I absolutely suggest we go in that direction. We may also get a good afternoon tea, especially if you like worms.
Why is everyone looking at me again?
I go,
maybe there'll be an oven there so you can cook your stinky pie.
I will kind of fold the map up and pass it down toward Tio, who will be taking us to the hill.
Oh, yes. So we carry on down. Well, it can hardly be called a ridge, can it? It's really a gentle grassy slope. But carry on down that slope, and then we start going up again, and we come to the top of the Great Hill, but it's actually best seen from the other side. Yes, I think, yes, it's best seen from the other side, so we'll be coming down from it from the very top. Yes, so shall we proceed? It's a very easy walk.
Yeah, sounds good. I hope they'll have some logics. I don't know if we'll make it to... well, we might make it to the next town. I suppose we'll have to double check.
I'm sure they will have. It's quite an expansive town, actually. It's a big hill. So,
and it's underground. How do I? I've very not often have I dealt with Molekind.
Oh yes, it's underground. It's where they do their herding, their earthworm herding. Yes, it's a very interesting place. I don't remember too much off the top of my head. We'll have to wait until we get there. But a nice stroll through the grass down to the hill should be very nice.
Yeah, agreed. Borkins will take one sweeping look across the valley, and I suppose we'll head down.
So this, well, I guess when we're getting to the edges of the hill, I can imagine like lots of like. Are like the entrances into the town, are they kind of like Hobbit hole-esque sort of things?
So it's basically you come down the hill, and on top there's like a stand of just like, it's kind of like Scots pine, kind of like kind of straggly trees and that kind of thing, and there's like some rocks scattered about, and there's a big cairn on the top, and you don't actually like see that it's a mole hill until you follow the path down past the cairn and down the other side of the hill, and then you see and you look down, and it's just this like vast, very much like Hobbit Hole style-esque, like like sort of village going down the hill with different like holes and different doors, and some of them are nice doors with flowers and whatnot, and some of them are just like earthworks. There's a lot of earthworks and a lot of scaffolding as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, which one do we knock on?
Well, if I remember rightly, any of them, they're all really joined up. So let's just pick the closest one, shall we? I have a name to ask for. I remember her. And Tia goes and like knocks on on quite a nice looking door, and like sort of waits and goes, no answer. I suppose nobody's at that door, and then hurries off down the hill and goes on knocks on another door nearby. And much the same sort of thing kind of happens again, and he's like down to the other door, and he's like knocking and knocking. He goes like, I can't understand it. That usually his place is completely crowded. I wonder where they've all gone. Perhaps we'd better go down the hill a bit further.
Maybe there was a battle.
Hermes, remember, it is over. The war is over.
No, I suppose.
What till soil? Do worm farmers till soil and till soil? Seems a strange thing to farm. In the same manner as one would farm a crop.
Well, I mean, worms would be very, very good at tilling and enriching the fields. So, oh yes, perhaps that they've gone to help the other folk down at the bottom of the hill. They'll have taken their worm. They're very large worms, very big. So they'd probably be quite good at tilling soil. Yes, I imagine that's the case.
Large worms?
Oh, there we go.
How large? Because there can be too large.
If I remember rightly, about the size of that nice cart person's beetle.
Oh, that's too large.
They're the ones that create all of these burrows and holes. It's how they create this village in this hill. It's quite incredible to watch. Let's go down to the bottom and see if we can find them.
Completely off story topic here. Is this a stealth preview of our next one shot? Because our next one shot is June.
Yeah,
June, but run by someone who's never read June before. I'm here for it. And has only seen the phrase worms. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Borkins will kind of be somewhat interested by this now, and will be kind of skipping, not so much skipping, but definitely moving down the hill purposefully.
sorry, just troubleshooting.
And I suppose, what do we find at the bottom of the hill then?
I think at the bottom of the hill we find a sort of it sort of like rolls down into a little bit of flatland, and there's a scattering of just like normal sort of village houses at the bottom, and they have smoke coming out the chimneys, so there's definitely people there. And you see that in some of the fields beyond there are really quite enormous earthworms sort of burrowing through the fields, being guided by a number of moles who are all in those sort of like shifts that like farmers used to wear, with the collar and they're like a over sort of dress kind of thing,
Like a big floppy hat.
In a big floppy hat. Yeah, they're all sort of wearing those. And yeah, I think we sort of go down into the village, and yeah, I think the village is like it's like a very nice village, but it's obviously in a state of chaos because everyone is so busy with the till soil, and there's plows just piled up all over the place, and there's like mounds of earth, and there's mounds of like weeds and stuff that they've been pulling up, and roots, and it's all just very, very messy. And there's a lot of people sort of running around looking a bit harried, like harassed. I
So
think
go ahead.
I think one of them is a mole wearing a hat, and I turn to him and I go, "You, good mole. Do you know of a very nice young mole called Adele?" And the mole's sort of like, Adele. Well, she's not very young, but yes, there's an Adele here. I could take you to her. She's deep in the hills. She doesn't really come out these days. But yes, we could go and see her. Just, I really need to get this plow over to that field over there first, or I'll be in trouble with my father. But yes, we could do that.
Constance, can we lend a hand and give this plow a bit of a kickstart?
Certainly. Yeah, you take that end. We'll get this shifted in no time.
We all gather round and kind of maneuver the plow so that it's a bit more transportable. I think mainly the problem here was that one person can't really move a plow, but 3 people can with a bit of effort. I mean, really, what you need is some kind of livestock, but short of that right now.
I think the little mole who introduces himself as like let's see, Seren, sort of goes, well, you know, these newfangled plows, not as good as earthworms, but they do insist on using them because, well, we have an inventor in the village, you see, and I don't know, I think they're quite heavy and they don't move themselves, but, well, you know, it keeps father happy.
Borkins, are you sure you should be attempting to move that large, weighty object with some kind of curse upon you?
Nonsense, it's fine. Nothing bad's happened so far. Something bad is about to happen. Yeah, so we get the plow all the way to the field, and unfortunately that thing happens that always happens when you're maneuvering something heavy, and the equilibrium starts to give way, and one thing leads to another, and Borkins ends up kind of looking glum by the side of the road, kind of with a little gash in his arm, kind of being a bit grumbly.
Yeah, Constance will take out her constant supply of bandages and poultices, etc., all of which are required when looking after a small child that is constantly damaging itself.
Tio has, just as Constance has done this, has already ripped a piece of cloth from his sleeve enthusiastically to be like, "Yes, I will help you. You're in a dire emergency," and rushes forward with it.
I think, given
and
the
then
two,
sees Constance and goes,
oh
"Oh,
no!
oh no!"
Don't worry, Tio. I brought my sewing kit. I can repair it quite easily.
Oh,
Thank you for the kind thought, Tio.
This terrible, grievous wound sounds like it might be a good cliffhanger for us to take a break on.
Yeah.
Will Borkins recover from this slight dent?
On the very edge of it being a nasty cut.
Absolutely.
Will he make it back to
armness? Yeah. We'll be back in another 10 minutes, folks, and then we will do the last segment of our lovely one shot. So we will see you then in 10 minutes time.